welcome to the Muslim Viewpoint, a new video podcast series powered by the nonprofit national media platform American Muslim Today. I'm your host, Maya Gaylor. Today we are continuing our Get Out the Vote series. Joining us is Katrina Schaffner, who is running for election to represent Arizona's 5th Congressional District against incumbent Andy Biggs.
So I've worked in the trades and I've worked in corporate and I've been a political activist my entire adult life. And I am running to challenge a system that benefits the top and has left the rest of us behind. I think it's time we hold billionaires and their price gouging corporations accountable. We need to invest in working people and everyday families and make sure that those at the top are paying their fair share.
Right, and in this race, it is you and Republican Andy Biggs, who is not the incumbent, as there is not one this year. So can you kind of maybe just tell us what about your platform that you're running, the issues that you're concerned about, how they set you apart from your opponent?
So Andy Biggs is the Republican incumbent. I believe this would be his fourth term in Congress. And there's a lot of differences between the two of us. He is a wealthy man who serves even wealthier men. And I am working class. Like I said, I've worked in the trades, and I understand how federal policy impacts our day-to-day life and how government should impact our day-to-day life. Andy Biggs is someone who surrounds himself with yes men. He has these blind spots and doesn't understand the reality of day-to-day life because he's not actually living it. He continues to pass massive tax breaks for the top, which is skyrocketing our deficit. He's voting against unions. He's voting against veterans. He voted against 3.5 million veterans who were exposed to toxic burn pits to get the health care that they need. He voted against small businesses during COVID lockdowns. And this goes on and on. He is far too extreme for everyday voters here in Arizona. And just to give another couple examples of who he is, he wants to eliminate OSHA, which is odd as it is. He wants a federal abortion ban. He wants to punish fertilization clinics. These are clinics where you would go get IVF services. He was at an Oath Keepers event where they were calling to hang then Senator John McCain. People are tired of his record and they are ready for somebody new. And this is where our campaign is really gaining steam because folks know that as a working class person, I am out there fighting for everyday families. I want to invest in our small businesses, strengthen unions, make sure that healthcare is affordable and that we expand Medicare to cover hearing, dental, vision. We need someone in Congress who's actually fighting for everyday families and going to pass legislation that impacts our life for the better. Andy Biggs continues to hold up legislation in the House because he won't even work within his own party. And I firmly believe that it's time to stop playing politics and start governing.
And there have been several issues that have come up this election cycle that are pretty much on the ballot in November, one of them being immigration, which has, it's become a hot button issue, especially whenever it comes to the border states like here in Texas and in Arizona. According to an AP News article, it was recently discovered that non-citizens, due to a system error, have become eligible to vote in Arizona, which is a significant uptick in the number of possible voters. So how do you see this affecting election results, maybe in your district or in the state, especially after we have seen anti-immigrant rhetoric from far-right conservatives and even Trump and Vance?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that, and that rhetoric continues down the ballot here in Arizona with people like Andy Biggs and with a lot of these MAGA extremists who are on the ballot. What we're seeing across the country is that these folks are winning their primary elections, but they're struggling to win the general election. And that trend seems to be holding true here in Arizona. Now, we've historically our state, so it is an uphill battle and it's something that we're fighting for every day this campaign cycle with candidates up and down the ballot. But at the end of the day, most people in this state have a more libertarian mindset. They just want government out of their lives. And they understand that this rhetoric that we're hearing from the far right of the Republican Party is really harmful. And so we are coming together to have more comprehensive immigration reform. We want to repair relations with Mexico, Central America, so that folks can stay home, so that we have less need for migrants to have to come here in the first place and actually get to the root of the problem. We also need to pass that border bill that's been sitting in Congress that people like Andy Biggs killed in the House and in the Senate, because this was a more conservative bill. It was supported by Border Patrol. It had resources to tackle the fentanyl crisis. And we need to really invest in more technology to help Border Patrol do their jobs, staffing to secure the border, and just provide those tools and resources that Border Patrol needs to stop those smugglers. On top of it, we need to end corporate profiteering to ensure that the aid we're sending isn't going to local oligarchs. And again, we're focusing on the root cause of the problem to minimize the need for migrants to come here in the first place. And that means we have to work together in a bipartisan way in Congress to get this done. That is not happening because so many Republicans, and I should clarify too that it is primarily these extreme MAGA Republicans who are holding up this legislation because they are using this as a political tool this campaign cycle rather than actually trying to govern. So this is kind of that perfect example of what I was saying before about needing to stop playing politics and actually start governing.
And as you mentioned before, women's reproductive rights and access to healthcare is being threatened by these extremist right-wing Republicans, similar to Andy Biggs. And even the Republican candidates for president and vice president have been less than transparent about the policy that they might want to state. As a possible member of Congress, how should this issue be addressed at a federal level, and how should women's access to contraceptive methods be protected?
Yeah, it seems like every day we're hearing more and more stories of women who are bleeding out in the hospital parking lot. So we recently had a story where a woman died because she couldn't get the care that she needed because providers are not feeling protected to do their jobs when they need to do them. And so this is really personal, not just for women, but for everybody, because it impacts our families just as much as it impacts our individual life. So this is absolutely something that I want to prioritize when I get into Congress. We need to codify Roe into law. And I want to be clear that this situation didn't happen overnight. This has been a long time coming, with Republicans stacking the courts over the years and have really pushed us in this direction. We need to work really hard now to fight for those rights and freedoms for women across this country. I also want to expand insurance coverage and educate the public on reproductive health care, because a lot of this reproductive freedom is not just about abortion rights, it's about, patient privacy and ensuring access to contraception, IVF, like we mentioned before. So this is a much bigger conversation than just abortion rights. We really are fighting to protect our reproductive freedoms as a whole.
Yeah, and just the last point that I kind of want to touch on here today is a more global issue, but we have seen that Americans, specifically Muslim Americans, are very passionate about and have been outraged by the mass killings that have been perpetrated by the Israeli government and its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Gaza, but now also in the broader Middle East as they have entered Lebanon. This has led many Muslim Americans to, distrust the Democratic Party and the Biden administration as it's shown loyalty to the Israeli government. As a potential member of Congress, what is your stance on our government funding wars overseas while ignoring the concerns of its own people and its own nation?
Yeah, this is a really sensitive conversation because there is so much to unpack here. And for me, I see this as through a humanitarian lens. And you're right, there is a lot of damage that has been done, and we're looking at so many innocent lives lost. When we talk about this and when these conversations come up, my mind immediately goes to that 6-year-old Palestinian boy that was murdered in Illinois after October 7th. And it just breaks my heart that we have seen an innocent child become a victim of this war who is so far removed and so far away from immediate danger, but yet he was still a victim of this war just because we have so much hate right now in this country. And it is devastating. We've seen since October 7th an increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes, an increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes, increase in anti-Palestinian hate crimes. And this is where we're at right now as a result of these one-dimensional narratives that we've been putting out there over the years. And yeah, I think that liberals also need to take some accountability for this as well, because we are putting out this narrative that is perpetuating some of this propaganda. And so we really need to be coming to the table to have a more dynamic conversation. And just to be really clear, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and I do believe that Israel has a right to respond to the attacks on October 7th. But we as a country need to prioritize our values, and we don't need to prop up Netanyahu when he does not align with our fundamental values. And I have a difficult time following his logic when he says he wants to, what did he say? Escalate to de-escalate, I believe was what he said when he went to attack Lebanon. So I have a very difficult time following this logic. We absolutely need to be prioritizing a ceasefire, making sure that humanitarian aid is getting through where it needs to, so that the women and children are getting the care and aid that they need, the food that they need, the vaccines that they need. And at the same time, we should be demanding proof of life from Hamas, because they still have our hostages that they have, and we need proof of life of the hostages and demand that they release those hostages. So there's a lot of working components here that we need to come to the table on together so we can opt for a more peaceful resolution going forward.
Well, thank you, Ms. Schaffner, for joining us today. If you would like to just add any closing remarks and tell us where we might find you.
Yes, please go visit my website to learn more about me, to learn more about policy positions and breakdowns on there. It's quite comprehensive. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our campaign, which you can learn more by visiting katrinaforarizona.com. It is all spelled out, Katrina with a K. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time today.